Joshua, am I audible? Yeah, okay. Representing GreenHonchos. Yeah, we've got some prolific founders here. I'm sure the rest of the 20 minutes will be a breeze. Bhavik, GetVantage, Dhiraj, Campus Sutra. Very interesting topic about unit economics, profitability, scale. That's all we've been talking about, especially at this time. Uh, who better than GetVantage and Campus Sutra to talk about these areas? I'll kind of open the can of worms, but if you can do your own introductions from your own perspective, it'll be much better.
Sure. You want to go ahead?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, so I think we have a nice, intimate audience, and so I'll just love for everybody to, you know, a give us a quick raise of hands. How many D2C brands in the audience? How many enablers
D2C brands first.
to just try and make our D2C brands?
7, 8 of them, yeah.
Fantastic, superb. How many enablers? How many working in the ecosystem? Great, great. So I think this will give us some color to make this conversation as candid as possible. I think, Navin, with your permission, we'll
Yeah,
try
yeah.
and make this less of a gyan session and more of let's have an exchange, let's have a debate. We've been trying to say let's make it debatable and provocative in approaches as well.
You can take on the role of the moderator also.
नहीं नहीं यार. My role is very simple. Yeah, I call myself an operator and founder, like many of you in the audience. I am no investment banker, no investor background. Uh, my simple introduction is 15 years plus building businesses in India and the US. Built a digital business called It's Cash before this, and so truly understand what are our challenges on a daily basis as an operator, as a founder. What are the different cycles you have to survive, and how do you try and make a business that's sustainable, that can survive long term, right? So I think that truly is what we try to do at GetVantage, provide that unfair advantage to a lot of businesses, brands, emerging brands, and founders. And we do try to do that by giving not only capital, which I believe is important for everyone and all forms of capital for a business, and how do we do that in a much, much more founder-friendly way, in a business-friendly way. So truly coming from a founder's attitude and understanding that no one theme. So right at the onset, I think the debate is important because no one journey is similar and no one path is the right path, right? We have to keep recalibrating, rebalancing, realigning on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, running a business, but trying to do it in a much more fundamentally correct and sustainable way. So we'll try and speak about that from financials, unit economics,
Sure.
etc. So that's the quick background.
Sure.
Thanks.
Great to be here. I think this meet, I think there have been too many sessions from Campus Sutra, so I'll skip the introduction actually, and would love the session to start.
Sure, no, I'm glad to be able to do that. Yeah, we've let's talk about the taboo term of the funding winter. And when I talked about that, you mentioned summer and monsoon and winter again. What does it do? What should D2C brands be thinking about? Is there any fear? Is there any silver lining? Is there any opportunity from where we've seen it in the last 6 months? How and what should D2C brands, from your perspective of use case examples, because I think you work like us, we talk to D2C brands on an ongoing basis, and it's so lovely to see the energy that they bring to it. But sometimes the North Star metric keeps moving.
Of course.
So, yeah, your commentary on that, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So मुझे तो लगता है कि whatever winter slowdown or whatever we have had, right, is the best thing that has happened to the ecosystem, right? It's something like playing on Indian pitches versus playing in England, right? यहाँ पर तो सभी मतलब छक्का मार सकते हैं. So what was happening in 2 years back, or what was happening in 2021, was that business, especially D2C business, in many ways was just becoming about creating revenue or creating GMV, right? What is management? हमारा belief है, or the thought system in Campus Sutra is that management is the art of managing constraint, right? And if you look at D2C business, mainly, I'm sure there are 20 or 30 variables, but mainly there are 3 variables. You have revenue, you have cost, primarily your COGS, and then you have advertising, right? at some price, all products sell. So that's our basic belief, right? That if you keep reducing price or if you bring a price below the selling price or whatever, everything will sell, right? Same thing with advertising, that if you keep plastering the ad or the product in front of the customer, no matter how good or bad the product is, at some point of time, someone will pick it up. But business is all about making sure that the equation works, right? That whatever cost of the product versus plus advertising, plus whatever value you're creating in the business, that needs to work. If you leave aside the third component, the overall business kind of ceases to be important. So I think what was happening till a couple of years back, that raising money was becoming the differentiator. जिसने सबसे ज़्यादा पैसा उठाया, he was the winner, right? Which actually, to be very honest, is not what business is all about. So I think in the current environment, what is going to happen is that you'll have a lot of stronger businesses emerge. The guys who had been just focusing on the GMV will start focusing on the bottom line and creating value, which is very important. And I think this is more important in D2C than, say, a network business, right? If you compare a business that, say, a Flipkart or Amazon is in, that's the business of last man standing. So there'll be one dominant player, and then one or two dominant players, and then there is no space for others. Whereas in D2C, in the business of brand, you'll hardly, except maybe, mobiles or some other categories like that, you'll hardly have any brand which has more than 10% market share. I always give this example that Zara, which is a Spanish company, even in Spain does not have more than 10% market share. Your brands like your L'Oreal, your whatever, HUL, Lux, all the, legacy brands that we have, in most of the categories don't have more than 10% market share. So it's not about creating market share. It's not about only creating top line. It's about creating value for the customer and then in turn creating value for all stakeholders.
Great. So Bhavik, I think he has stoked the...
No, but Navin, I'm actually going to take his permission and use this next time. It's like the Indian team playing on the England pitch. I'm going to use that with the funding winter analogy.
yeah, especially after yesterday's ashing that India's...
No, yeah, I think completely agree. Just taking that theme ahead, and I think, Navin, I have always spoken to you about your business and how you built it as well, right? You built it to survive and last.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest takeaway personally, as a founder first, is in the 10, 15 years journey of building businesses, not only in India, even in the Valley, right? We were building a tech business, and 2008 happened in the Valley, and we saw blood on the streets in San Francisco, right? My only takeaway from that, and in 15 years, I think I've seen at least 2 or 3 cycles now, to simply share with everybody that like every year, like every annual year, there are going to be 4 different seasons. Every winter is going to be followed by spring and by summer and by autumn then, right? You just have to last out and build your business to survive different cycles at different times. And what we mean by survival is have the pulse of your business and understanding of your fundamentals, right? You might be chasing different targets at different phases of a business. Sometimes you're focusing on growth. Sometimes you're focusing on revenue. Sometimes you're focusing on bottom line and profitability. And being able to just calibrate between all of that to ensure that you survive multiple cycles. And personal experience, after every cycle, we've actually seen a better upside. 2008, I saw the cycle in the Valley. 2009-10, I was able to sell that business. 2016, we saw demonetization, a down cycle, but for its cash, and as a fintech, a digital business, it was an upside, and we were to take an exit 2 years from there. So I think every down cycle only gets you ready to be able to really capitalize on the next cycle. And so my takeaway is just be financially disciplined and have a good pulse of how your model plays out, so that every time you want to calibrate, and there will be different phases.
Sure.
You have to sometimes invest in growth.
Yep.
I actually agree with Dhiraj in saying, but I'll take it one step further. I think even in Amazon and Flipkart or network business, India, unlike anywhere in the world, has proven it's not a winner-take-it-all model. VCs and venture capitals don't like it, but truly, India is not a market that you have a one winner-take-it-all model.
More democratic.
Right? It's going to be a homogeneous market. There's going to be enough opportunities for many players. And I don't know whether in which sector or industry it's going to be 10% market share or higher or less. But yes, macroeconomic, you have to invest in growth in India right now.
Sure.
How do you do it in a much more sustainable fashion? That's the financial discipline in engineering you have to decide as an operator and founder for your business.
Great thoughts there. I think, Dhiraj, if you can just add to the same, which is the importance of survival and those cycles and then thriving.
I think, very honestly, survival, if you're looking at surviving in business, it's the wrong way of approaching business. You're not in business to survive. You are in business to, create something great, right? SEBR, entrepreneurship is very, very difficult. Before starting Campus Sutra, I was with Walmart for 6 years, and I keep telling this to my friends and family, that, I might be earning 10, 20 times higher, but life was much more peaceful in the corporate world than it is now, right? So you don't want to be doing this and then just survive, right? Already इतने हजारों tension है उसमें survival का एक और ऊपर से तलवार लटक रही होगी तो problem है. One need to be passionate about what you're doing, one, and second, at an overall level, you need to be creating value. So unless until you think that you're creating value to the ecosystem, to your customers, to the stakeholders in business, I think you're in the wrong business, right? Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of this funding up and down is that, and again, just my kind of view may be different for different people, but many times businesses and founders end up chasing the investor's dream. So which then kind of, maybe doesn't allow you to take decisions which are good for business overall and in terms of creating value. So you need to know what you're creating, one. Second, you need to be creating value. You can't be in the business for survival.
Fair enough. No, good thoughts.
And I want to bust, at exactly this juncture, I want to bust two myths. When we think investors and when we think funding winters, we're really talking about equity investment. I think for everyone as a founder, I want to absolutely openly share this. I think Dhiraj has had a long journey. I have had a long one. As a business, you need all forms of capital. And please do this. Sorry for sounding like a professor, but Google search two types of funding. And there is equity and quasi-equity, right? I think the seasons and winters, we are very perplexed by this theory that's been created that investors are only equity investors and VCs, right? I think there is all forms of capital that your business needs. You need equity investment that really does help you experiment, take off, depending on your business, your strategy, doing R&D, some capex investments. But then there are quasi-equity structures. And I'm using the word quasi-equity because I'm trying to strive and break the myth of the word debt. Okay, not every other form of non-equity dilutive capital is debt. Debt can be termed as long-term, 3 years, 5 years, you take longer-term debt, etc. But there are capital advances, revenue-based funding, there is inventory financing, there's marketing capital for every different aspect of or your use case. And so when there is a winter in one type of equity investment, there will be another season in the quasi-equity investment. So your business has to be ready for all seasons and your business has to take all forms of capital. And there are many alternative forms of capital. I mean, look, here's an example how much I've interacted with Dhiraj and Campus. He's built a bootstrap business, right? And I think, Navin, to a large extent, even the business you've built, right? So I don't think there is anything like a funding winter. When there is, day somewhere, there is night somewhere. And just being very smart and aware as an operator, as a founder, that taking all forms of capital for the right use cases and fueling that area of growth, that area of efficiency. Capital is not only for growth, it's also for building efficiencies, building cash flow management, right? So just taking those other two levers that let's not get glamorized by just one form of capital, truly build a business like Dhiraj said. Let's build a business fundamentally. Let's build a brand. And I think that's what the biggest takeaway is.
Great insights for me as well, obviously for all of you too. But there was a question when I was doing a keynote this morning, and there was a fashion D2C brand that asked me in the Q&A, can a fashion D2C business be unit economics positive? I'll leave that to you to answer because you're probably...
Dhiraj is the expert here,
yes.
But I will take the first take on this and I'll say, yeah, sabse pehle to I think you all have heard it probably many times now. I will reiterate it. D2C kya hota hai yaar? You're building an emerging brand. You're an insurgent brand. You're building a brand. D2C was probably the channel you started from because in the new age, you were able to get going with that first channel. And I'm not going to give you the gyan that every business and every brand has to be omni-channel, but every business has to be multi-channel. All of you who raised your hands as a brand and a D2C brand, just look inside. You're trying to build an emerging brand of today and tomorrow. Correct. So we always say this, right? Even the word startup is loosely used. I think all of us, irrespective of the sector in the industry, are building an emerging brand of an emerging India, if you're looking locally. And so approach it from that. You will have multiple channels, multiple different strategies for multiple channels. So whether a category of fashion or not, as GetVantage, Navin, we keep sharing data with you that, we've backed about 18, 20 categories. Sure. And I think every category has different ROS, different ROI, yep. Different profitability matrix and margins. But I think one fundamental, and I agree with Dhiraj, I think again, the roots of being a businessman. If you're building an emerging brand that lasts, you have to be a profitable business. Okay. Business has to make profit at the end of the day. Probably not today, probably in a few time or few years, but wo to banana padega. Sure. Otherwise, you're not really building a business.
Yeah, I think very honestly, profitability in fashion में तो कोई problem ही नहीं है. If you can't build a profitable fashion business, then there's something wrong with you. Very honestly, so that's like the first thing. The problem with fashion business is.
But how do you define fashion? So fast fashion,
any fashion,
like
any fashion. If you look at any successful fashion brand world over, is any brand working on loss? No, right? You start from the Nikes, Adidas, Zara, any fashion brand the world over. It's not a technology business or it's not a infrastructure business where there's a lot of capital going in at the start and you'll start making money after 10 years. That's not what fashion business is all about. So fashion business has to be a profitable business. The problem with fashion business is scale, right? In India, and we always say that, right? So in India, if you take a 8 to 10 year horizon, and you see brands who have done 100 crore plus in fashion and have survived for 5 years, there are hardly 5 or 6 in India, right? So the problem in fashion business is scale, because with scale, the complexity of the business increases, unlike a lot of other categories like FMCG or beauty and personal care and all that. Yep. But profitability is not a problem in fashion. So, that's about it. And again, I think koi bhi D2C business, koi bhi brand business cannot be non-profitable. Right? You can take certain investment decisions, whether it is in terms of marketing, in terms of, building some capabilities, building a certain brand, but that has to be written off in the first 2, 3, 5 years. It can't be that I'm spending 100 crores on marketing today and ye 10 saal ke baad profitable hoga. Again, just to share Walmart example, right? And I was in Walmart, I think in 2006, right? Ek humne was kind of lucky enough to be in some of the planning discussions initially. तो हमारा एक टारगेट था कि 60,000 करोड़ करना है इंडियन मार्केट में, एंड वो 12 साल का टारगेट था. मैं वहाँ 6 साल था. हर साल वो ईयर चेंज हो जाता था. Target remained 60,000. Right? Unfortunately, that's what happens in a lot of D2C business. सबका 100, 200, 500, 1000 करोड़ का टारगेट है, वो 3 साल के बाद 5 साल हो जाता है, 5 साल के बाद 10 साल हो जाता है. The year keeps changing. So that's not what business is all about. I don't need to tell you what happened to Walmart business in India, in spite of being Walmart. So if they could not do it, for us to think we can build a non-profitable business which will start making money after 10 years, I think we are living in fool's land.
Thanks. It's great validation coming from someone who's scaled a fashion business profitably, rather than us theoretically saying, yes, that's possible. But probably last words from you, but I have a different question, and then we can open it out for any Q&A for the last 5 minutes. So GetVantage, you've backed and studied and advised a lot of D2C brands, and you use the word capital and you use the word efficiency. Any good examples you can give founders here of how some businesses or brands it can be anonymous, but how are they able to do it efficiently? Anything that left a mark in terms of your being able to see?
No, I think there are umpteen case studies, and it's always fun to come out to an event because we've backed about 500, 600 businesses, and you get to meet so many of the founders of businesses we've been able to back and help and fuel their growth. I think the first biggest takeaway when I spend time with a founder in a business, sharing some insights is, every founder should have a financial toolkit. What is this financial toolkit, right? Have all your options
open.
available for what are the different forms of capital and different forms of partners you can take capital from, right? Every founder should absolutely start his journey by, we don't have to be finance experts, but you have to at least have an understanding that there is different capital for my different areas of growth. That's the first starting step. I think the second thing has happened is, and literally in our journey of the last 2-3 years, what we've seen are massive changes. And how many of you all are seeing this, right? That now every funding round also that you're seeing getting announced is all, and so many more founders are being smarter and raising hybrid rounds, right? Your announcements are a mix of equity and debt. And I think quasi-equity, right? And we use the word hybrid. And I think that has been very, very good, where at least the first awareness is that, look, I take this capital and I take this capital, and what do I do with it? And I plan it smartly. Just 2-3 examples. I can give you guys some great brands across D2C products. I'll also give you, if you're a services business, if you're a subscription business, what's really worked and what we've seen brands do well is understanding the cash flow cycles. And the one biggest takeaway that has been common across a mattress brand to a fashion brand to a coffee brand has been, understand your cycles. You will need a quarter to ramp up inventory. Then you will need a quarter to increase your marketing. You will have a quarter where you have a seasonal time. And so it's going to be a mix, just understanding that really well as an operator and calibrating yourself to that. I think that's only the magic mantra.
That buzz was probably for all of us, but any questions from them, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and we can be done. One question? Yeah. Thanks. Just one question, please.
Yeah. So as I was talking about constraint, right? Returns is a constraint in online business, right? The problem happens when you start thinking of returns as a problem. It's not a problem, it's a constraint. This is what the business is all about, right? You can't do away with returns. So whenever you're building your P&L, balance sheet, your pricing strategy and all of that, that needs to go in as a cost element. So again, when you're approaching returns, you need to approach from the fact what is controllable, what is not controllable. Jo controllable hai, obviously you kind of, it's a continuous process, you work on that, you improve your returns. But what is not controllable, you don't even think about it, you don't even track it. You start building that in your cost structure to make sure that the business works. अब उसके बारे में रोके ये करके कि 50% return है 100%. We are in markets where the returns are 60%, and it's not for our brand. It is overall. We are, and I don't want to name the markets, but there are markets where the returns is 60%. There are brands in those markets which have returns of 80-85%, and still they make it work, right? So whatever is the reality of the market is the reality of the market. उसको कैसे बनाओगे, कैसे करोगे, वो तो खुद पे है.
Thanks. I think we're out of time. Thanks for being a magnificent Fireside Chat panel. Any further questions? We're short on time. We'll be around for a while, I'm hoping, and you can catch us there. Thank you.